Thank you. Rick, thank you so much for leading the meeting in June. It went boom, boom, boom. Everybody was ready to speak. I learned a lot. It was really a great meeting to follow along. So thank you again for doing that. There were follow-up notes, I mean, it was really great. I really appreciate it. But from my notes from your June meeting, I have a lot of agenda items for July. And some to all are time sensitive. Maybe we can think about how much time should go for each agenda item. Before we dive into the agenda for the next meeting, are there other things for this small group to talk about?
I come with good news, I think, for once. We are moving. This is the furthest we've been in terms of the HR process with recruiting for the KD vacancy, the Kim Durant vacancy. So the coordinator position. And we are going through, kind of final phases of reference checking. We have a very, very strong candidate that we're super excited about. So I am hoping that, our stars are going to be in alignment and I can bring the final good news to us all soon. Yes, but I
Congratulations,
felt very
Lynn.
relieved. Yes.
Yeah, that's a long process. And I know
Yes.
you've done a lot.
Well, thank you to you and to Dr. Kristen in helping us with all the first round interviews. So I think we'll be happy.
So what are you gonna do with all your spare time?
I don't know. I might have to find a new hobby, John.
Well, that is wonderful news. Yes. Great. And so good.
I'm gonna stop dyeing my hair because hopefully it won't be graying.
You won't need to. Gray, right? Great. So why don't I put that on the agenda as an announcement? Announcement/update.
Yep.
Okay. So on my agenda, and maybe pretty important, is having Bryna or a staff member present. Now that could be time consuming, and maybe it would behoove us to kind of check in with her behind the scenes. I know we have an open question of whether the partnership is subject to the same rules as everybody else. Judy had recalled that maybe we're not. Even if we are, my second question is whether county employees count towards quorum, or whether it's volunteers only, how that piece works. Does anyone know?
Yeah, I think I have a couple of answers. One, I've confirmed with Brenna that yes, the partnership is, as a commission, is under the guidance that's coming out with the electronic meeting bills, right? More concerning to me, maybe that's not a word, but also the subcommittees. Subcommittees under this commission is also obliged, to all those regulations as well. And I do not think that county staff counts as a quorum. However, a county staff is required to be present in these meetings if we're doing the hybrid. So I think quorum is more of commissioned, members. Right. But we can have, Brenna clarify all those questions. But I asked similar questions when she initially trained us with follow-up emails to her after training.
Right.
Now, to clarify who's going to come, it's Brenna, and there's another person in her office. Who did you communicate with? Yeah.
So when Bryna trained the chairs, she said someone from my office would be happy to come talk to you. Let me know.
Okay.
Probably later in the summer. I heard that the planning commission's been told that we're starting up again in September. Does anyone else know for sure? September.
That's correct. Yes, September it starts.
Yeah.
And what we're also waiting for confirmation is for Sequoia, the auditorium, to be set up for hybrid, because currently last time I was down there, maybe 3 weeks ago, it was not set up yet. So they would have to, it's on the list, is pretty high up on their list to get the room set up for hybrid. And that means, you know, lots of technologies is going there. They have these hanging, you know, microphones in the room to pick up, you know, sound in the whole room.
Yeah,
So
like the
it's
county boardroom. And if you've been
yeah,
to the courthouse lately, all of courthouse is like, the lobby is completely being redone because all those
mhm,
conference rooms at courthouse are also being
Right.
redone. So
right.
someone said at a training I went to, well, maybe you could use courthouse. And I'm like, parking at courthouse, yay, let's pay $8 an hour to park at courthouse. So yeah, that was.
Yeah, so we may, you know, if Sequoia for some reason is not going to be set up in time, then we would have to find other locations in the county to do it.
I guess a couple of questions. We kind of went around it a little bit on the chair training, but if you don't have a quorum, do you not have a meeting? In other words, does everyone go home?
Mhm.
Because, you know, I can envision inviting speakers and having no
Right.
quorum.
So I
and
asked
then-
that question also. I'm
Oh,
sorry,
great.
Megan.
Go ahead.
I asked that question, and they said that you don't have to cancel the meeting. The meeting can go on without quorum, but you cannot vote for any action. You know, you cannot move any items forward.
And I think that's where Judy's because confusion came, because historically, as I remember when I started, I was told, well, we don't, the partnership doesn't vote on anything. We've used like rank choice voting, if you will, to prioritize things. But as far as like making a motion and Robert's rules and passing, I was like, because I come from like a Robert's rules, you know, secretary background, and they never did that. So I think that's where Judy got the idea that maybe weren't beholden to some of the same rules, but also these are new.
Its founding
rules.
form, we must have spent the better part of a year deciding we had to do it by consensus. And that means that anyone that objected seriously could stop anything going forward.
Wow.
So that if you didn't agree, but it was okay to let it go, that was a consensus. And that's in some initial formal written documents. I think it's been overwritten a couple times with other bylaws or something.
Yeah.
But it's been very informal, and I don't know that we've ever taken a vote. We've put stickies on a board to get priorities.
Right.
But no other vote has ever been taken.
Yeah.
I think, you know, for example, if we wanted to update our bylaws or something, we would certainly want a quorum. But that's really good to know, Lynn. I'm glad you asked.
Yeah.
As far as that eases the pressure a little bit on waivers, but I know waivers are required. And they're granted
Yes.
for health reasons, or also on a rotating basis or something like that. And so I would love to come up with a decision among this group. You know, I know I'm the one who has to sign off, but who could people contact, you know, the coordinator if they want to seek a waiver? And so how will that be administered? Do we have ideas?
Yeah, I think it's reasonable to submit the request to the coordinator, you know, to facilitate the process. But like you said, you're going to be, as chair, you're going to be playing a critical role in reviewing that and approving that. But it has to be in advance kind of thing. Like, I think there was a note about requesting, you know, in advance of the meeting. So it's not like very last minute or after the fact.
Yep. And then the minutes have to reflect, you know, the
Yeah.
reason, although it doesn't
Right,
have to be
exactly,
specific, it
right.
has to say health reason and other, you know, what the other
Yes.
reasons are. So.
Yes.
These are public meetings, so anyone from the public can come. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So can a public guest be online without a waiver?
No, I think the waiver we're talking about for commission members, right,
Right.
Megan?
So you can
Yeah,
have.
if we have a hybrid meeting, I don't see why not, John.
Yeah.
If we have a call-in number for a
Well,
hybrid
that's
meeting, I don't see why
relevant
the
to me,
public
I'm
can't just
sure.
dial
I'm
in.
not,
Yep.
I won't be eligible for a waiver, and I'd like to come to the meeting, and I don't want to screw up the numbers. So I think it's easy as long as I'm a guest. So I figured this one out. And I think Judy's technically a guest now. I don't remember the status. And so,
Yes,
Correct.
I don't think she renewed her,
Yep.
her commission
But
membership.
then you and I talked about the data committee. If you, me, and Carolina all want to join a data committee meeting, as of September, that meeting will have the same requirements as a regular meeting. So be
Yeah.
recorded.
Well,
And so,
so that's the thing that we can decide on too, is how formalized do we want the subcommittees to be, right?
so even if it's,
right,
even if it's not formal, Lynn, excuse me for jumping in,
Mhm.
anytime three of us gets together who are members of the partnership,
Hmm.
it's a meeting. And so Brian really stressed this in our meeting
Really?
with the chairs. Yes,
Right.
we're not even supposed to have a casual call without having the public invited. And that's the letter of the law. And
Oh,
so,
wow.
we've
Wow.
been doing some planning calls to invite people to
Yeah,
join a data
yeah.
committee. And technically those calls, otherwise, it would be sort of a way to sneak around the public meeting requirement. If you could sort of have a side meeting
Yeah,
that wasn't an official meeting. And
Right.
so anytime it's more than two, and Brian had kept doing this, in our training,
That's a
you have
group.
a meeting
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it's required to be announced as a public meeting.
Wow.
I'm wondering, I wonder if perhaps we're getting a little ahead of ourselves until we have an opportunity to speak with Brian about this. One thing is like the planning commission or, zoning review board who are making major decisions that impact county in a permanent and legal way. If we're not making all these decisions, I don't know.
So Rick,
It seems to me that we need to get more information because
Yeah.
it does seem like a bit of overkill for what the
we,
partnership mission
so
is.
what I'm telling you is the training that was provided to
Right.
chairs, and chairs from the tiniest commission to the biggest commissions ask these questions. Planning Commission has a separate training because all of their meetings, everyone's required to be there in person. That's the difference. Everything else on down, I'm telling you, mom and pop commissions where the
Yeah.
person's been the chair for 10 years, and they never get more than 3 or 4 people in a room together. The rules apply to them as well.
Right.
So we've been trained already. What Bryna offered was to provide that training and an opportunity for questions to all of the members of our commissions and committees. And then Lynn had a separate training for staff that predated this training. So the bad
then I
news
had
is
another
what
training
I'm
after
telling
that,
you
yeah.
came out of that training.
Yeah.
Sounds like very bad news then.
It's just scary to me in terms of all the details that has to be in place for us to continue. And I'm saying that maybe, well, not maybe, but many of these rules and regulations have been in place for a long time. We just haven't been following it. But I think that this is a juncture because they're like revamping all the training, and I think they'll be kind of checking to make sure that we're following it. Meetings are announced. There's calendars that we have to put up, and notes. Minutes. There are templates for minutes that we'll be using, for example. Yeah, I mean, the only flexibility that I felt was in terms of quorum. What establishes quorum? If in our bylaws is not clear, then we can just decide on the majority rule, but so I was thinking of like the health and not the health and safety, the youth, mental health subcommittee, the youth wellness, is that, that can be, we don't have to establish, unless they want to, the chairs, a full bylaw, but to just go by the majority rule.
Lynn,
To establish quorum.
I don't think that's part of the partnership anymore. If it's not supported, I mean, they've moved the website over to the Arlington Foundation for Families and Youth. And I'm sure they have, we all believe we're not part of the partnership at this point.
Well,
so that would be worth clarifying, because without support, why is it related in any way?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't been to, a youth wellness, when I don't want to go into it too much here, recently. So I don't know if the group's still, meeting and functioning.
We will, I'm sure.
Yeah,
The participants are happy to
Right.
continue, but
Right.
once there's,
Yeah.
I think, especially given these requirements, I'll be
You're right,
shocked if
right.
anybody bothers. Because sometimes there's a problem comes up and 2 or 3 people get on the phone. You can't do that without 3 days notice and put it on the calendar
You
and then
can.
take notes or something. So
yeah.
I think a lot of commissions of those softer variety, I think are going to bail out and consider themselves family organizations, community organizations.
Well, that's what
It will also impact diversity, and it's hard enough to pull people together, for people to find time to do stuff. I am sorry. I regret hearing all of this, I must say.
Yeah.
But I'm willing to go along with it.
Yeah.
It's the storm is creating some issues indoors and outdoors.
I'm hearing it here too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, maybe that there are like a number of kind of parallel kind of conversations or issues here. And I think that if we go back to the initial plan of inviting, Bryna and or her shop to come and clarify what they train us on, I mean, that still is going to happen. The conversation about subcommittees, is a separate one. But it is clear that any subcommittees under the partnership is gonna have to, stick to those rules. So, Megan, do you want me, or will you follow up with Bryna to have to
It'd be
invite
great if
somebody?
you would, but I'm
Okay.
very happy to.
I can do that.
That sounds great. And if someone's available, that's wonderful.
Okay.
If they're not, we can resend the presentation, and maybe Lynn, we can follow up on the call
Okay.
with a couple of things you've learned.
Yeah, because if we invite for July, which is coming right up, and they're not available, we can't do August because we're planning.
Because we don't meet
not
in
a
August.
formal-
Yep.
Yeah, not a formal.
I guess
meeting.
maybe flag for them if they're not available. Can you flag the September date
Okay.
for them,
Okay.
even though that's going to be one of the first meeting with.
Yeah.
Thank you. The other big ticket item for our meeting was the SEL presentation by
Yes.
Dr. Newton. Is she? Did someone
No, she's
confirm?
not
if she's
available.
Oh, she's not.
No.
She's
not on what?
I thought I looked written in the notes.
Thank you for
Out of
checking.
town. As it turns out.
What is
She
that?
will be
Megan?
preparing
I'm
a
sorry,
presentation on the 19th.
I'm
for the
sorry,
school
I missed
board.
that. What were you saying in response to whether Dr. Newton will be available?
She's not available to come to the meeting in July.
Okay.
She's out of town. However, she will be presenting to the school board on the 19th. So we
And
can
I
look at
wonder,
that.
I mean, I can still look back with Dr. Devaney because, Dr. Devaney can also present SEL as well. I should do that, huh? Okay.
I would
And if-
welcome it if she can. I know Dr. Newton expressed that she wanted to do that presentation and it was sort of her responsibility,
Okay.
but so maybe just
I can email
CC
both of
her
them
on the
to see if,
request.
right. Yeah.
That'd be great.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But yes, it'd be nice to have that sooner rather than later, because
Right.
then our data comes in, it'd be nice to hear what they've got and what they're up to before
Yes.
we get our data. Thanks. I don't know that we need to discuss again the Virginia Legislative Assembly priorities. It sounds like Judy had the best idea, and the only idea I haven't heard separately from other folks. So maybe that's just a matter of drafting a response. Should I get with Judy about that? Or did others have more to add? I know Judy presented, she said it doesn't have to be particularly detailed.
I don't have any information about that. Oh. Anybody there?
Yeah, we're here.
I can hear you, but John might be frozen.
Okay. No, John's good.
I know everyone's
I'm
good. All right.
just on mute.
So
I'm just
I'll,
distracted by the thunder. That's right.
I know, right? I heard some weird noises outside. MM to follow up with Judy. Get that in. Okay. And then Robin had suggested an agenda item. I didn't catch it exactly, but it was something on, getting feedback on how the nurses are doing. She raised at our June meeting. Rick, did you have more for
Well,
others?
she said something about the number of cases she'd had. And the question was, did the other nurses in the other schools have a similar number of cases? So I think she was suggesting a survey of the school nurses. And I would question the validity of that, because if you're half-time, you probably get fewer referrals than if you're full-time. So you'll turn more down. So you'd have to have a record of those you accepted and followed up with and those you turned down. So it'd be it's a tough survey, but that was what she was interested in. Because we remarked, I forget the numbers, but she had like 1,000 cases so far this year or last year to deal with, and some number of hospitalizations and some number of follow-on. It was rather dramatic numbers. I put them, they're buried in my own notes for the meeting, but I don't have those in front of me, so I can't quote, but that's what she had in mind.
Remind me what Robin's position is. She's school health, right? DHS school health. Is she a supervisor? She's newer to our group, so I don't remember.
I think she's just in I think she's in one of the school.
Okay.
Is she?
She may be at
She
Carlin
re-
Springs.
She may be at Carlin
Report to
Springs.
Robert?
Yeah.
Because she implied she was full-time.
Right. So she's at Carlin Springs. Yeah. So the supervisor will be able to answer, and her supervisor is Sarah Bell, who, Sarah Bell is supervisor of school nurse.
The division, yeah.
Yeah.
Robin is the nurse supervisor though.
Oh, okay.
Even though she's in a school, she's also,
I
I
see.
think
Okay.
that's her title. I'm just looking at her card on Outlook.
Thank you, Sally.
So what's our next step? Do we get with her and learn more about what she has in mind? Get with her and Robert, maybe?
I think that's a question for a data committee, in the sense of what data do we want to prove what points? The advocacy in there is, if you give a full-time nurse position, they deal with more kids than if you have a half-time nurse position. So I don't think it's going to be hard to get data. I just, whether you trust it is something. And then there's a whole process. Does the partnership advocate something in that? What's the process of go through? If there's no youth mental health, there's no committee, so it would have to be, I think, the full partnership, understanding, debating, and recommending to the next chair.
I think we have a decision point before we even ask the data committee to undertake it, or that the data committee can go ahead, and get with the nurses and jump in.
If we want the data, if we want to follow up on Robin's idea, somebody that is pretty good with surveys and data ought to be involved in doing it. Because as I say, if somebody's working half-time and they answer the phone when it comes in, and they're there full-time and they answer the phone, you can show that the ones only half-time are only half the need. And the question about mental health and nurses is, what's the real need in that institution? So that the important numbers are how many got turned away, not how many were treated.
I think I'm stepping back, John, a little bit to say, is it a partnership decision whether we want to dig in further and we turn that to the data committee, or can the data committee just undertake it as on their own kind of
I would
work
guess
with
that is
Robin?
That is an issue that the partnership has recommended for close to 20 years. More nurses, more full-time nurses. So it's already in the record that the partnership has advocated it in writing, presented to the board for years. Not last year, not the year before, because we've been disrupted for the last several years. There's a longstanding issue. I don't think we need data to re-advocate. I'm not sure we want to advocate till we see the rest of the data. This may be the third or fourth or eighth most important item. So I don't see we're ready to choose that. I'm just saying, I don't think you need much data.
And it's really is not quite the moment for advocacy anyway. I mean, we can prepare, but it's when the budgets go before the school board and the county board.
Oh, you don't advocate now, but you build the case.
Right, and we need to also build the case in our own minds, looking at the data, but I mean, we don't have data, we don't have sufficient data to make that recommendation. Other than it's a good idea, of course, there should be more school nurses. School nurses would meet a need, would probably meet lots of different needs. Not just
Well, that's
for
what
health,
Robin
but also
said.
education and
Right.
things that aren't necessarily, therapeutic, clinical, behavioral health stuff, but just, other stuff that do impact health.
Has
would think it'd
APS
be-
chimed in on this? Has APS folks kind of supporting or pushing this?
I don't think so. Well, if they had, somebody would have asked for it at the senior levels. I doubt if this has ever been discussed between board members
Hmm.
or a suggestion from the superintendent over to Mark. I doubt
What
it.
do you say that it's likely when we get all of this information that's coming out, all the survey data from 3 different sources? I mean, that'll highlight the things that are really, really important. And we can base any advocacy or recommendations
Right.
in that.
Exactly. I think it's way too soon to choose that. As I say, it's been on the list. Yeah, the partnership was always recommended more after-school activities for teens. That's been on the list forever, including for a while, a teen center. And there were a lot of objections to a center because that brings too many teens together from too many different groups without the facilitators to sort them out. So we were really advocating hundreds of small teen centers.
Right.
Anyhow, there's plenty of stuff that's been advocated, but that's been on old data. We've now had 2.5 years of COVID. And more important than the COVID, I suspect, has been the virtual schooling and the breakdown, because that's changed the kids. They're not the same today. At a given age today, the kids are not the same as that age kids 3 years ago.
Right.
So that's the issue we're dealing with if we're talking about the kids. I haven't thought about children particularly or families, but the youth, we know where the issue is. But it's got to be in the data, and somebody's got to look at it.
Yep.
So maybe John, for now, do we leave this with the data committee?
I would say this gets put on the table to be brought up if and when it's relevant.
Next, Lynn, this is probably something that would be better in September or after, Dr. Otley and his, unless you have an update on that you think we could.
I don't, I saw your agenda and I went back to the email threads and I think I missed his community thing when I was out of town. I ended up being out of town that Wednesday and then it disappeared from my calendar. So I did not make it, but we should, engage with him and invite him, just how we invited Mr. Gregory to our meeting, the last DEI officer with APS to come and speak and share with us what his plan is.
He is about to be involved with a equity-based budgeting program. the story is that Reed last year was given an award of money that he could use not for himself, but to hire someone to do a contract. And he has found a contractor that will look at the way the school budget is allocated between schools on an equity basis and provide 2 or 3, 4 formal models that one might use. And this is related to our last year's recommendation to reinstate the 2 mental health professionals, that they were cut because the school has a rigid formula for how many students, how many nurses, how many counselors, how many teachers, how many whatever. And equity-based budgeting would say, if you have a school with many more English learners, you might have an extra professional doing that. If you have a school with many people that are disabled or have a bigger than average special ed program, you'd break the allocation. And so Jason is the one that's going to be, I think, leading this. And most of it is being contracted out. So I don't know how much he would or could say about it at this point. It's going to be worth a briefing sometime between now and the time the results are in the spring.
Right.
But it's a new, interesting initiative. And since Reed is the chair at the moment, I suspect it'll go forward.
So lots of reasons to invite him. I did try to invite him on the specific issue of the community engagement that he'll be doing, the community conversations. But, I can just open that up and say, please, let's pick a month when you can come talk to the partnership.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you'll follow up with him?
I will follow up.
Thank you, Megan.
Can I ask a dumb question, which I should know, but Dr. Otley, is that the same person as Jason?
Yes,
Who is Jason? Okay.
Jason
Jason
Otley.
Otley.
Sorry, I've been in communication because I'm in the middle of this project.
Okay.
But the money, money's coming from the E Pluribus Unum Foundation to the Arlington Foundation for Families and Youth, to APS, to AlloView Inc. So I'm in the chain of having to get these contracts. You want each of those 3 contracts to say the same thing. So I don't want to take the money from E Pluribus Unum to do something that AlloView is not going to do. So we've been going back and forth, and APS hasn't quite completed the contract with AlloView, so they haven't finished the contract with us. But Jason's the key player on this, I think, Dr. Otley. Because it's DEI very much.
All right. So I will put that on my list, just making a note. And then the next thing I had.
I'm glad you're still saying DEI, John.
I know I say REI in my
No,
annotate.
Well, our governor it took out the E. So
Oh,
What is that?
Well,
stand for?
at least there's an I.
equity.
Oh.
So he changed equity to opportunities.
Oh,
So he at the state level he changed that. So it's I don't know if it's DOI, but he replaced equity with its opportunities. So.
I think that the next one is DEIB, meaning belonging. And so it's not
Okay.
just being included, but it's actually belonging.
Right.
So that's an emotional change from just
Yeah.
being there.
Data committee and data updates was on my draft agenda. John, I'm not sure, maybe just a general data committee update would be great. Do you want to share with this group?
Yeah, I think, well, there is no data committee yet.
Right.
And given the restrictions on meetings, that may change some of my planning for it, because I don't think I can be an acting chair virtually. That doesn't work. So I'll work with Megan until we get started, form the group, and I'm part of it, maybe as a guest. Anyhow, what's important, I think, at the moment is this isn't a data committee to suggest questions for surveys or to analyze the answers that came in as such, but rather to look at what we're getting back from an earlier survey that was designed by someone else and decide what are the key messages for the public at large and the leaders of our community. And once we have that sense of what this, then it is, to whom do we push these? I mean, you can make them available. They'll be on a website, okay? That's not push. There'll be, maybe some notice will go out saying you can check this box, you can take a picture, but who gets the individualized letter or email or phone call or Instagram saying, we'd like to meet with you, someone would like to talk about it, or please read chapter 2 of something that somebody prepares. So we're talking about bringing in people that understand the community as more than people that are data specialists. And so probably a young person, a student who knows student issues, or a recent student, or one of the TNB graduates, possible. I think I had in mind Wanda Pierce. She had been the executive director for the Community Foundation for 8 or 10 years. She's with AHC now. She's got a radio broadcast with WERA interviewing leaders of the community. She's done that for a year or two. So she knows the community very well. She's African-American, she's educated. So I thought, she or someone with her contacts in that community. And so I'm looking for people with different attitudes. There's one, I think Carolina has suggested a couple of people to us already. And Mary Cadera suggested one. The one Mary suggested for sure is a high techie. He likes to crunch numbers. And so he's got a website where he's crunched numbers and may or may not be popular. He's got one on the missing middle housing initiative that is interesting. And if anyone wants to check it, I can, well, Megan's got his email address. We can look at that. But anyhow, he's a techie and he's very interested. And another woman that's been suggested is part of the Mothers of North Arlington. It's a lobby group, but it's bringing in a very different constituency. So we're going to try to bring those in, and enough people with data experience so we don't go off a deep end somewhere. But it's really, here is the data. Why do we care about whether people eat potatoes? Why do we care about their bullying? Why do we care about, and who should know about this? And so there are health concerns, there are mental health concerns, there's athletic concerns, there's educational concerns, and we need to go after those.
And is this following up, John, on that idea of taking the data to the people and either giving them stuff that they're already interested in, or encouraging them to, look at the data themselves and use what they need? Yeah,
of course. Look, we are lightly staffed, okay? I mean, at the moment, there isn't a coordinator. There will be a coordinator. Grace is half-time at best for the partnership. When I've communicated with her, she says she's very busy. Give me warning if I'm supposed to do something. So we don't have a model from the past. It's not the same. We have, and our past coordinator for the partnership was Kim, who loved to go out and talk to anybody. The new person may not like to go out to every PTA meeting in town, might not like all those evening meetings, may have a very full job doing what Lynn's been struggling to get done in this part-time position. I mean, there's a lot to do to run the partnership full blossom. We've been running kind of skeleton issues. We got meetings, we've got, but Lynn, how many times have you gone out to give speeches about the partnership and the data? Right, that's not your business. That's not you're not supposed to. So we don't know that until we know who the new person is, until we know what Grace can do, likes to do, is willing to do, can be directed to do. And we don't know. So we're going to bring people together and try to find out, how do we send something to Mary Cadera that she wants? How do we send something to the chamber board of directors that they'd like to see? How do we bring out data? And at this point, there's no advocacy per se. It's just, here's the data. We thought it's interesting. These numbers have gone up since the last time in 2019. These numbers are flat, they're going down. These numbers are suspect because that's what we do. And we have to find a new path, and it'll be a different path sometime from now, because at some point they'll be redoing the surveys. The extent that we have any input to what's in the survey, the information we get from the past ones might indicate somewhere to go in the future ones. I mean, one problem I've seen with all the surveys is they'll ask something like, have you been bullied? Yes. What kind of bullying? Yes. Well, maybe where? Yes. But then, was it resolved? Did you talk to somebody? Has it continued? Was this, there's the follow-on that would be very natural, but you can't do it with 100 questions. So you've got to figure out which ones you don't need anymore in order to ask the extra ones to dig deeper.
Right.
Or if Grace has access to the individual answers, and I don't know that at this point, whether it's aggregates only, then she can do internal cross correlations. Did you have dinner with your folks several times a week? Yes. How often do you skip school? Is that more or less than the kids that don't have dinner with mom and dad? That kind of thing. You can look and see whether these supposed positive attributes really reflected in Arlington kids' positive behavior. And they give you interesting ideas. They're not all definitive because you don't ask the questions at the right time and place, but the internal correlations can be valuable. Which kids take drugs? What's their background? I mean, the Search Institute has data that says lots more thriving behaviors, lots less risky behaviors. That's aggregate. We had an early one for Arlington. It looked like that. We had COVID for 2.5 years. Who are today's kids? And we don't know.
Right.
They don't use phones, they use text.
We have
So
one more conversation this week with, did you mention that, John, already, with another
Mhm.
potential volunteer? Mary Cadera had shaken out another volunteer, but she's just been too busy. She and I have emailed back and forth a bit before I went out of town. But it was real tough to get a time to sit with her, so it might not be a good time for her. And a couple of the folks that Carolina had brought in, including the person we're talking to this week, and Kristen, who's already on board, have said, they have other things. John, also the new John, said he might not be able to make it to meetings, but, so there's going to be, I think, a fair amount of email coordination of this group. And again, John, if I don't go to a meeting, then you can have a phone call and everybody can get together and you could still be the acting chair if there's only 2 members present. So I just want to raise that as a possibility for your acting chairdom, and so there are a number of those possibilities.
Yeah.
There's people involved. What do others think about asking maybe Siobhan if there's a TNB member? I was pretty excited by that idea. To see if they would be interested in considering that as a volunteer opportunity. And I'll ask maybe Carolina as well, what you think about that, since you have a TNB member in your household.
Oh.
I wanted to ask John, what about asking Kim to come back to this committee? Since she is, she likes to do presentations, maybe she would like to do that again?
I think she's fairly busy as the outreach coordinator, but I know her well. I mean, I've worked with her the whole time she's been there, and I knew her before, so I can ask her about that. Yeah.
Or perhaps even having Kim just do a little bit of training for the new person.
Well, I would hope that takes
Getting
place. You
ideas.
know, Lynn can do that as well as Kim at this point. So,
Yes,
Sure.
I would like to chime in on that. I'm not sure that that's not a kosher approach to, to kind of reach back in that way.
no, it's
I
a
do
different
real,
committee, as I'm
yeah, it
saying.
is a different committee. It really is, and we have to work with what we have, and and if all goes well, our next coordinator is a data nerd, and so it may work out. So I think that we'll give it a few weeks, a month, until the person's on board. Then I think we'll have a clearer picture. And having said that, I supervising the coordinator, there are some thoughts that I have in terms of the position and the scope of work. That is not about duplicating exactly what Kim was doing. There are things that we're going to change up. I think that the new coordinator is going to be, kind of critical and having the hands in all of these committees and subcommittees, so you do have that support. I do like the idea more that the data subcommittee has a plan that would maximize everyone's contribution in that group, right? Including presentations, so that it does not fall on just the coordinator going around talking about the data. It could be members in that committee that teams up with her, perhaps her or him, to go out and talk about the data. So I think there are elements that are still developing. That's coming into place soon. So we don't have to plan out all the details. But I would be very hesitant as supervisor of the current coordinator, to reach out to Kim Duran to ask her to onboard my new staff. So.
All right, that makes sense. So why don't we have data committee on the agenda, and then Grace may not have an update, because I feel like,
Yeah, she was forwarding the emails to us from the CDC, was it? And it was, they were
yes,
saying that it's not until, I think end of summer or September.
the
And that
Virginia
was,
Youth
yes,
Survey.
yes, exactly. So that's pushed back even further than what we were hoping for.
Okay, so maybe I'll leave it on the agenda as just a data committee update.
Right,
And
right.
John, are you okay providing that update at our meeting?
I hope so.
Yes. Anything else? So what I have going back through is inviting Bryna or a staff person. Hopefully they can join us. Inviting Dr. Devaney to provide the SEL presentation, since the
Yep.
school board will have had that presentation this
I
week.
can do that. Yeah, I can do that and begin. I can email
Thank you.
Dr. Devaney and Dr. Newton. Another item that we mentioned in before was the FOIA training. Did we want it in this next meeting? I mean, I can try to ask Jen Longman to come and talk about it, or do you want it in September?
I guess if we get Bryna, we might not have time for a FOIA training. How about
Okay.
that?
Okay,
Yeah.
so
And
I'll
doesn't the
wait to hear
Bryna
from you.
training sort of precede the FOIA, sort of logically precede it? Or do you think they're independent enough so that it
They're
doesn't matter?
independent, because we were supposed to be under FOIA this whole time, but I don't think we ever had a formal training of what that means, right? And I think it's a
Right.
good reminder that, like any conversation that's partnership related is FOIAable on whatever device, in whatever format that you have.
Who's the
Yeah.
person who provides that training?
Yes, Jen Longman is our compliance officer for the county. She's been, doing that for us.
Sounds like
Great.
you,
So if
The only
Bryna can't
hesitation
make it,
the hesitation I have about that, though, is it seems like two very technical presentations about rules that maybe people are not going to be so happy about. It might be better to space them out.
Rick, that's what I'm saying. If
Break
Rick,
the
if we
Try to
have
beautiful
talk a
pill in
little bit
Bryna,
half.
about FOIA, and we can say, and in September we'll get a more thorough training. Because that's a little heavy, don't you think?
Rick,
Why
my
is that?
suggestion is
Yeah.
it will either have Bryna or FOIA. You're
right,
saying you don't
right.
even
Yes.
want those in July and September. You'd rather space them out even more, or?
Oh, no, July and September is good.
Yeah, that's what
Yeah.
I'm saying. I mean, honestly, if we get Bryna, I think the Q&A could fill up an entire meeting.
Yeah, it could really
So-
could. It really
So
could.
I'm not suggesting doing
Yeah.
both. I'm saying if Bryna and her staff can't make it to our July meeting, then we'll see
Right.
if the FOIA folks can make it.
Mhm.
Does
Yeah.
that work for you?
Yeah.
So I'll keep FOIA on there. And Lynn, you're okay asking?
Yes, I will ask Jan, but to just kind of, just to softly see if she's available in case
Oh, great.
Bryna is not available, and see options for, either July or September.
Okay. And then, gosh, Lynn, it sounds like everything's with you. And so I think you were also going to check with Dr. Newton and Dr. Devaney.
Yes, I get
Is
that.
that right? Okay.
Mhm.
And then other things are updates that this group is providing. I was going to add on to the agenda that I will send around maybe as a follow-up. After the meeting, I'll send a kind of a friendly membership email attachment that
Yeah.
Sally could circulate. That's just for people to use with their networks and
Yeah.
say, come join the partnership. So I know I raised that enough
Good.
times, so I don't need to offer that for discussion again. We can just send it, I think.
Yeah.
But I'll mention it's coming. That's all I have.
Thank you. Oh,
Any
there's the
other-
thunder. Oh,
I
it's
know,
getting bad
right?
out there. Yeah.
Anything else for July? It's going to be a packed meeting. And then, oh yes, a call for volunteers, because I don't think we heard from anybody on a picnic or
No,
type of event.
correct.
Are people still kind of hesitant about being in person together with all this news with, BA.5 and the increased rate,
Maybe I was
Yeah.
thinking a park
even outside? Yeah,
get
but
together would be nice.
still,
But do you think
maybe a
people would
mask on? I mean, it would
hesitate?
be like, with the, I don't know. I mean, I know some people are hesitant.
I think, moving forward, we're gonna always have to be asking.
John's
ourselves,
raising his hand, right? Yeah, I mean, being outdoor helps, but also, even with mask on, people are still concerned. And at the picnic, you're sharing food and all that, so it's I'm not sure that we're.
Yeah. So, I mean, what does this group think generally?
The other
up,
thing
down?
was-
Because what I can,
The
ahead.
thunder. I mean, nearly every day at this time, we have a thunderstorm, or like every Wednesday or Thursday at this time, we have a thunderstorm. And I know, like in the past, when we've had the extremely heavy lift of like Kim going to Giant and getting a
Yeah.
lot of stuff to a park, and
Yeah, it's
Or
a
the
lot. It's a lot
weather-
of work.
and then the weather would contraindicate that, we would like be scrambling
okay.
and
And
be
that's
like,
why we
we'd be,
moved
like
it
sitting at work,
indoors.
like, do we go? Do we not go? And then like,
Right.
so that was the only, that's my freshest memory of getting the picnic thing done.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
raise a really good point. I'm
Yeah.
I'm hearing a lot of, it'd be great to see each other in person, but maybe this is
I
not
know.
a good
Right.
time. And we didn't get a volunteer.
Yeah. And it could be that we give, people a month off from meeting, and not, if we don't do a
I'd like to
picnic, we don't
suggest,
do a social.
why don't we present this to the group to see if there's energy? You can always tell if there's energy around something or not. I don't think it's necessarily a good idea for us to decide. Because maybe people want to have that, they're thirsting for that informal communication or whatever. I think to not do it, let's give it one more shot to see what people
Yeah.
say. And if they're not interested, then it's a group decision that everyone has made,
I'm happy to agree with that. I just note the last meeting had 3 or 4 volunteers and 6 professionals. And so are you saying
Yeah,
that the people
right.
from DHS and the schools really are looking forward to an August picnic? I mean, I think we don't have enough volunteers to
No.
make a picnic
Yeah.
of volunteers that want to meet each other. I mean, yes, I'd be delighted to meet Carolina more. We'll
Right.
get a chance to over time, I hope, but she's new.
Right.
I've got experience from the old and I've got old bad habits.
Yeah.
But so that's a good exchange. I'd like to see you, Rick, and I'd like to see you, Luke.
Right.
I mean, I like this crew,
Mhm.
but in my case, no, I'm not coming. That's a predetermined path we've been on for the last couple of years, very successfully so far.
Yeah.
So I don't want to break it at this point. Comes winter, But right now, outdoors, small groups, distance, no problem. But
So-
other than that, problem. So I think you don't have a very big group that's going to be dying to get together.
I appreciate that straight talk, John.
So
I-
do you think because the new variant is like, making people very nervous, do you think they will go back to just video, Zoom meetings instead forcing people to meet in person? And therefore, or maybe an exception for those like John that definitely will not meet in person. And so he can be the co-chair for this new data committee?
It's,
It's-
I don't know. I mean, I think it's not a linear message in any way at any one point. I think the county's requirement in September is the lifting of the emergency declaration, the requirement of, the meetings in September. But there are other things that is going the opposite direction. I know that, at DHS, as a medical facility, we provide medical services. We have different guidelines and regulation. We're still mask on. We're still, the spaces are very, very regulated, and that's what we are. And we see, we look around, we see our clients and the numbers. And I have neighbors and parents of my kids that I have to cancel play dates with because the numbers are spiking. So it's on people's minds. So I think that it's not the best time. And like Dr. Vorgisi, our division director for public health, his one question is that, is this necessary right now? Right? Is what you're proposing necessary right now? Can you do it in another way to achieve whatever goal you're trying to achieve? And if I would ask that question about this planned picnic, it feels like it's a nice to have, but not a must have. And that's a direct Kim Durant quote. It's a nice to have, but not a must have right now. So, we can bring all this up to the larger group and have many different options, and people can, kind of vote for it, and we'll see where it goes.
Yeah, I agree. I think it'd be nice
Yeah.
to not come to the big group and say, we made
Right,
this decision, but
exactly.
but
I
what
agree
I'm
with that.
hearing is, I think that will be the decision.
Yeah.
And Carolina, I just wanted to point out, in case you don't know, but maybe you do, it's the meetings question is tied to the emergency declaration. Did you know that already? So whether they lift the declaration, a lot of things flow from that. And the only thing that I know flows from that is the meeting requirement. And so, whoever the county board or administrator declares, whether we're under a state of emergency, these other things flow from that determination.
Right.
Which is above most of our pay grade.
Yeah. The county manager. Yeah.
But
County
the governor
manager.
is above
Mark.
that.
So yeah, we don't get to decide what's a good idea. All right, thanks everybody. I've kept us over. I feel like I have a mosquito around on the inside here.
It's trying to get out the rain.
And the